Hey, this is David Hayter. You may know me as the screenwriter of films like X-Men, X-Men 2, and Watchmen, but you probably know me best as the voice of Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid. And you're listening to Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. Kept you waiting, huh?
The Kasanova Podcast, the #1 podcast in Hawaii, is brought to you by these contributors on Patreon. If you'd like to see more content like this more often, as well as more podcast reviews, impressions, early access releases, live streams, and original content, then consider becoming a patron today. And welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova, Hawaii's favorite YouTuber, and we're back with a very, very, very special guest and a landmark episode in the Kasanova Podcast. And this is a landmark episode for the simple fact that we have with us the one, the only, the legendary Andrew Reiner of Game Informer. He's the executive editor for Game Informer, so you already know this man's been writing amazing content for the last 25 years. I followed him for almost a decade, and it's just amazing being able to talk to someone who grew up and came up in a time where, you know, the landscape of gaming was much different than what it is now, and being able to not only look at it with and without the nostalgia goggles, but also being able to look at what we have now in the current games landscape and see how it's improving, and you know, some of the things that we're concerned about, some of the things we like, and we're just having organic conversations on this episode. So if you're ready to do it, I'm ready to do it. Let's go ahead and welcome Andrew on to the show. All right, and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Miguel Kasanova, and I've got the honor and privilege of once again having the executive editor of Game Informer, the one, the only, Andrew Reiner. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Good. It's my honor to be here. This is a great show, and I'm glad you're still going strong. And yeah, anytime you want me, I'll be here.
Yeah, man. I feel like has it been like a year and a half since you were on last time?
Yeah, no. We've had some scheduling issues, but yeah, I'm always glad to be here.
Dude,
you're fun to talk to.
I completely understand, man. You have your schedule is super busy. Plus, we also, you know, for the audience who may not know, like our time zone difference is incredibly different. Like,
yeah.
5-6 hours.
Yeah, like you're in June already, right? Like I'm still in May.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's been a while, and I think the last time you were on, like I was doing this part-time. Now I'm doing this full-time as of September last year, and it's people think, oh yeah, you're doing full-time podcasting and video game reviews and all that. No, it's not that easy.
Oh no. I mean, yeah, the last time I was on, I was able to go outside.
Yeah. And
be near people and do handshakes. And now I can't go outside. I can't do any of those things without the threat of dying.
Yeah, it's super true. Your state didn't open up yet, did it?
It did today. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So kind of a soft open, but it sounds like my comic store's open again. Mm-hmm. And I called them. I was like, hey, congrats on being open. And they're like, we don't want to be. But they're like, we didn't get the small business loan or, you know, like the bailout. And it's either open now or closed forever. So I was like, oh, man. But they're going to do stuff where I could just go up to the door and get my comics. They could throw me comics and I'll just let them sit on the ground for 5 hours and then pick them up or something. I don't know.
Okay.
So, yeah, there should be some system in place. But, yeah, moving forward, it's going to be weird. It's going to be really weird.
Dude, it's so crazy because my wife actually recently got laid off from her job, and trying to get her unemployment has been absolutely insane. It wasn't until I want to say maybe a week ago that we were able to get her to be able to go in and log in and set up everything, because before that, like, you couldn't even log into the system. And one of the things, like I was saying to a lot of people that I know that have been trying to get it, it's like, this pandemic has really shown how both unequipped and unprepared, as a nation we've been for this. And I think not only this nation, but around the world, like, it's just absolutely insane.
Yeah, and it's, we're going to be in it for a while. This is just starting. That's the scary thing, right? And sorry to hear about your wife. That sucks, but
no,
we'll get through this, right? Like,
yeah,
there's still video games.
All the time.
Comic books are coming back. Hopefully everybody stays safe, and we look forward to 2021 where we can go outside again.
Yeah, and what's crazy is, like, never would have thought in our lifetime we'd ever experience anything like this.
Yeah,
never. So,
I mean, you'd read about it in the history books, right? Like, the
the
1920s, or when was it? The Spanish flu, the early, turn of the century. And it's like, oh man, that sounds awful. Glad we have vaccines and all that fun stuff now. Like, science has come a long way. We're living longer. And then all of a sudden we just get a new strain of something, a new virus, and nope. We're in worse shape than they were, or potentially in worse shape. Like, things are not trending the right way.
And were people where you are currently, were they taking it seriously? Because I know here in Hawaii, people were not taking it seriously at all. They were saying, like, it's a mainland issue. It's not something we need to be concerned about. People partying every single day, going to the beach. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I would say most of Minnesota, where I'm based, it seemed for a couple weeks, everybody was kind of like staying at home, trying to kill this thing off. And then as people got bored and frustrated with, obviously losing the jobs, their businesses closing, that frustration kind of boiled over to people taking the streets, protesting, and now just even disobeying, like, certain laws, like you can't do certain things, and they're still doing it. So it's going to be rough. This next month's going to be really rough.
Did you guys have like the full on like quarantine hours or lockdown or anything like that?
Okay. It was just like, certain restaurants would be closed, social distancing, do it as best you can. Stuff like that. But, parks were still open, people still going outside, hanging out by lakes and all that stuff. So not as severe as some places or countries even, but we didn't do enough of it, right? Like, they even said it was like 50, they wanted to be at 80%, and we got like 56%, I think, for Minnesota. Wow. And now our cases are, we had 700 yesterday, and now everything's open today. And it's like, this isn't trending the right way. Like, this is going to go poorly. And I hope the hospitals are equipped now, after a couple months, to be able to handle this, but I don't think they are. I think it's going to be really, really chaotic and really sad what's going to come next.
Yeah. And like, speaking of hospitals, like last time we talked, I was actually working for the hospital out here, one of the main hospitals here, Hawaii Pacific Health at Straub. And I was one of the senior systems analysts, and my entire team with telecom, because we'd had to go into, more often than not, we'd had to go into the patient rooms to do work with the networking team and set up the LANs for the VoIP phones. What's crazy is it's kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time, because I'm blessed that I left when I did. Yeah. But I feel terrible for the fact that the bulk, if not almost all of my team, caught COVID-19. Oof. And it's like, we've already had like as of a week ago, 2 people who I used to work with passed away from it.
Oh, and man, I'm so sorry, dude.
It's, it's just one of those things where, like, every time I hear people talking about, oh, it's just the flu, it's not that serious, I'm like, no, it's,
yeah. Yeah, that was the first like message that was out there, right? Like people were like, well, the flu kills a lot of people, and this is a whole different monster. Like even you can't compare the two. At Game Informer, we, as soon as this thing kind of hit, I think it was Seattle and California, those first cases, we immediately jumped to action. It's like, we can make a magazine from home, right? Like video is going to be rough. Like it's going to be like we're doing now, where we're not in person, we're over the internet, but technology is to a point where, you can make a decent podcast. Yeah. It's just visually, it's going to be a little different. But so we did that, and we've been locked down since end of February.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, for us, yeah, because I think that's when it was starting to hit.
Yeah.
And then I think they started locking stuff down in March. So we were way ahead of kind of most people's actions. We just knew this thing was going to be bad. And we made a call early on.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm very, as a friend, I'm very, very happy that, you're doing okay and, staying safe and everything. But yeah, this is in your opinion, like how would you say this has affected like the gaming industry as a whole? I mean, we already, E3 is not happening, it's almost every gaming convention is done with the exception of the Summer Game Fest, which is going to be happening digitally. But what's your opinion on?
Yeah, the fan expos are obviously gone for a year plus. So I don't know if they're ever going to return like they were without some new rules in place. But for games, I hate to say this, it sounds really weird to say with people dying and all that, but games like are kind of one of the big winners of the lockdown. I think also like movie streaming and TV show streaming, people looking for escapism, ways to, bite off time as they're stuck at home. And I think games are a big way to do that. Playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey for 100+ hours, that was something that was like, oh man, that's going to take me months. And now it's like, that sounds like a good couple weeks. But I think people are really kind of looking for that. And in terms of like the industry itself, how it's affecting development, we don't really know yet. I have talked to some game developers that I've gotten to know over the years about how things are going. Some say that it's business as usual. The game is on track for said release date for PS5 and Xbox Series X. They haven't, working from home hasn't really changed things. Other teams have said the exact opposite. Yeah. Where it's like kind of ground to a halt, and they're really struggling to find a way to keep that pipeline moving, like trying to keep content coming in to make this thing. And I think we're going to see a lot of delays moving forward, not just like The Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima. Those were kind of delayed just out of kind of the very beginning of this getting really bad, the pandemic, and they kind of moved out of that into the zone where things are being eased up. But I think as more people lose jobs, as I said, games were the big winner here. That's when people had secure incomes and they bought Animal Crossing right out of the gates when this thing was getting bad. What happens now that you have 30 million Americans that are unemployed, and others, even me, I feel it like I'm pinching pennies a little more than, I have a job, but it's like, I want to have a nest egg in case I do lose my job, where things get even worse as they move forward. So what are you spending less money on? And that's like entertainment and toys and things you don't need that aren't necessities. So we'll have to see, but game sales were really strong at the beginning here in February, March, April, and time will tell. But I'm hoping things get back to normal here. We have new systems on the way. Yeah, and hardware is expensive, and so to the point I just made, what does that mean for these new systems? Yeah, could be a slow start to the next generation.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I mean, honestly, with this whole pandemic happening, and like you said, the amount of people that are unemployed, if these systems come out, which some of the people I've spoken with, it will be up there in price. how should I say, aggressively, competitively priced. I'll put it that way.
What do you think they're going to be, by the way?
I'm picturing between 4 and 5. I don't think, and I've heard some people say that they think it's going to be like PlayStation 3 again, like it's $600-700. I'm like, no, I can't see them doing that. I just think that's going to be rough for Sony and Microsoft right now with this. It's just trying to sell people on a new console during this.
I'm excited. I always like getting new technology, especially day one, and just putting it through its paces and seeing what's going to change, for the next decade ahead of gaming. But you're totally right. Like if Sony is coming in at a higher price, they might have to take a loss on that and try to make it up on software. And they might already, but they might have to take a big hit just given where the economy is. Yeah. And people's desire to spend money on stuff at this point. Yeah.
And like I'm constantly seeing, like every time I go on Xbox Live, or if I go on PlayStation Network, or even the Switch eShop or Epic Game Store or Steam, like I'm at a point now, like every time I turn around, there's a sale, and I'm like, I want it, but do I need it? Yeah, but it's so cheap. But my backlog.
that's the gamer reflex, right? Like we all have hundreds of games we've never touched before. Yeah, that's just how it goes. It's like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to play that new Darksiders game, and then it's like 4 years later, it's like, I really should have played that when I bought it, and now I don't want to.
Yeah, it's insane, man. Like, especially now, like So, to touch on one of the things you said earlier about, people consuming content, like I've seen a significant uptick, like when I stream either on YouTube, or I've actually switched over to streaming on Twitch because it's really weird. I don't know, like a lot of channels I know on YouTube, like have or people that have channels I'm friends with on YouTube, from Chris Van Vliet, who does wrestling and celebrity interviews and whatnot. Like they're telling me that when they stream, they get hit immediately with demonetization, and it's very strange because I've started getting that happening to me as well when I stream. So I moved over to Twitch, and a lot of people tell you, oh, you go to Twitch, or if you stream, it's going to be hard to get people to watch you. I'm not having that problem. People are like,
good for you.
They're coming through and they're like, hey, what are you playing? I need something to watch.
No, that's great. I wish I could stream more. I'm a single dad with one kid, and I got to focus on that. And I'm also a first grade teacher now, full time, because I have to take care of her schooling, at least for the next few weeks until summer. But then it's like, do I put her in summer school just because, like, I think that she's fallen behind. I'm not the best teacher. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. The schoolwork she's getting isn't that much. It's like 40 minutes a day. It's like, really? This is it? One day she just got like a couple of videos to watch about like a blue whale. And I was like, are we really? That's it. And basically the message is, we don't want them to like lose what they've earned, like they've learned, right? They want to maintain their learning, and they don't really care during this pandemic, or they don't want to push them above, or have me as a parent alter the course she was on for learning, like create other conflicts for when she does go back to school. So it's a mess. And I don't know, I'm rambling about my life, but
no, it's fine.
I mean, it's the reality of this world now, right? Like things I used to be able to do, I just can't now because I have other responsibilities that have crept up, or I can't do things anymore because they're gone. Yeah. They're shuttered, or, it would be, I might get the virus if I do it. It would be ill-advised.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's probably a hot take, but I feel like this pandemic has shown some of the absolute worst in people, especially like with the toilet paper and with how people are, skyrocketing prices on things. Like I don't understand scalpers. I don't understand this. Like, okay, so when it first hit, I didn't understand the toilet paper thing. Like, I still don't understand. I was actually talking to Marcus Leto the other day, and I was like, you know, him and I were talking back and forth about that. I'm like, dude, what's going on with that? And he's like, I have no idea. Do you get it? I'm like, no, I don't understand it. You know, I don't understand. Like, he got to a point here after that whole toilet paper thing went away. Then it was all the canned goods. When that went away, it was all the soda. The only thing people here weren't buying was bottled water. And I'm like, okay, that and hand sanitizer. Those are the two things that people here were not buying. And it's just weird, like the hoarding mentality. I'm like, what are you going to do with all that?
Yeah. It's funny because one of the guys at work, he ran out of toilet paper. So I was like, oh man, I got to get this guy some toilet paper. So I went down in my basement and I was like, well, I have 12 rolls left. Let me see if like my Target has any. My Target didn't. And then we have a grocery store here called Cub Foods that had it. So, I'm using the app to have it delivered to my house. And I had toilet paper delivered to me. And then I hopped in my car and I drove over to his house. I drove 20 minutes with 6 rolls of toilet paper and I threw them over his fence. And I was like, I hear him like, hey, thanks. I was like, no problem. Hope that lasts you for a week or a couple. And then as I was driving away, I was like, that was one of the most badass things I've ever done. That was super cool. Like, I helped someone out by giving them toilet paper and I threw it over a damn fence. Like, that's the reality of the world we're in right now.
Do you feel like, I guess when we do go back to normal, like, do you feel like a lot of us are going to have that hesitation about, just things that we used to do, going to restaurants, going to movies or any type of public social gathering? Like, I kind of feel a little anxiety about that.
Yeah, I totally do. I'm a big Chicago Cubs fan, and every summer I'd go to Wrigley, right? I'd go for a series. I'd go for 3 games, and that's like one of my favorite pastimes, and that's not happening.
Yeah.
Even if they have like 8 seats around me, that's not happening. Like, this virus is a monster. One person sneezes, that thing can fly 20 feet across the, the stadium. So, I feel really uneasy about that. There was some good news today about a potential vaccine. Moderna, I think is the name of the company.
Yeah.
But it was like they, injected it within a couple dozen people, and 8 of these people ended up getting antibodies that, fought this thing, that kept it at bay, basically. But that's only 8 out of dozens, so you got to think about that. Like, where is the end here? Like, is there an end, or is this just something that's going to be with us forever? What does that mean to the things we've done in the past? And it's like, sports may never have crowds, not never, but may not have crowds for a couple seasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
All movies might have to be streamed. That might be our new movie theater.
Yeah.
For the next couple of years. Like, I hope not. I hope this is done sooner than later, but just going outside and taking a walk when someone walks past me now makes me uneasy. And it's not a shady looking figure, like someone that, it's like, oh, that guy might have a gun or something. It's like, it could be a kid. It's like, nope, stay away from me.
Yeah.
Don't open your mouth near me. Yeah.
You never know. Like, when my wife and I go out for walks, it's like, as soon as, if we're on the sidewalk and we see someone coming towards us, we're like, all right, let's walk as far up into someone's yard as possible so that this person can walk at least 10 to 20 feet away from us. Cause it's terrifying, especially when that there's not a cure yet. Just,
and there may never be one. It might be the flu, right? Where, it's like you get a vaccine every year and hopefully it can keep it at bay enough to you don't get the severe symptoms, but you still might get sick. Yeah. That's probably the best case we have moving forward. I'm not I don't know anything medically. I'm just reading stuff on the internet like you are and everybody else. But this thing sounds like a real problem, and there's no easy solution. And we all have to be safe and figure things out as we move forward. But like you're saying earlier, like some of our things that we used to love now give us severe anxiety and seem like bad ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. With events like the Summer Game Fest coming up, how do you feel like, I guess, with an all digital front for the industry to showcase gaming? Like, do you feel, okay, adding on to that question, given how, to give it more context, given how like E3 was a great place for indie developers to showcase their games, because sometimes that was the most they could do. They may not have the PR budget to do the marketing and whatnot. Do you feel like this type of digital event will be a boon for indie, or no?
I think it's totally unnecessary. This whole Summer Games Fest name. I like Jeff Keighley, and I think he does great interviews and stuff like that. So having him do interviews, fantastic. But these publishers and developers could just do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Right. Like they just put something out there. IGN, Game Informer, GameSpot. We're all going to cover it. If Playdead's like, hey, we're announcing a new game at this time, here's the live stream, we're going to put it on our website and let people know when to go there.
Yeah.
So this whole concept of a digital fest just seems kind of ridiculous to me. Like it's unneeded. It is nice to just maybe see the names of the companies that are involved in it. But again, like any news site would do it. It's not like E3 where you have to have a physical presence, and it's for fans and press, and it's a place to be united. These publishers can do this without spending any money and just do whatever they want to. That's the state of the world we're in now, right? And you're seeing that. Like, Assassin's Creed was just like, yo, here's the new Assassin's Creed. We had some artists paint it for a while. It was pretty cool, right? Like paint this picture of the game, and now we're announcing it. And tomorrow we're going to show you the trailer.
Yeah.
It works, right?
Or they can do like Nintendo. They're like, hey, here's Paper Mario. It's just
out of nowhere. Yeah. Or they're Nintendo Direct. They're like, hey, tomorrow's Nintendo Direct. Oh, hey, you just learned 30 new things. Cool, right? And you walk away with your mind blown, like, I want to play all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I have to admit, like when it was announced, and this is supposed to go, I'm assuming 3 months or so, from May to August, and I'm like trying to figure out like what is this, because like you said, all the the major gaming news outlets, you're all going to cover it. So I don't
it's just like a weird bubble to put everything in. But you don't really need to.
Yeah, and when it was announced, I kind of figured, I was like, oh, okay, so Jeff Keighley, he stepped down from E3. It's like, okay, that was kind of major. And then this gets announced. I was like, oh, this has been in the works for a while. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's a weird thing. It's just like a placeholder E3 thing. Yeah. But yeah, I don't get it.
Speaking of E3, like, did you feel, I guess, when this pandemic clears, do you ever see E3 coming back? Because there's a lot of people saying E3 is not necessary, we don't need it anymore, we've got PAX and all that, and I'm like, well, I don't know.
I love E3. I'm one of the E3 defenders. Maybe not the organization for leaking all of our information and treating journalists kind of poorly through that whole thing. But it is like the biggest moment of the year for games, right? It feels like all spotlights in the world are, for at least a brief moment, are on video games and seeing what's there. You have all these newspapers and news outlets covering it, the mainstream stuff. And it's just, you go to Nintendo's booth and it feels like Disney World, right? Like
it does.
You have statues, animated, robots and games everywhere, and just a sea of people, which is now a really terrifying idea.
Yeah.
But back in the day, it was just this spectacle, and there was a magic to it. And that was for every company. Every booth you'd go to, Capcom with a big life-size Monster Hunter dragon, lording over you. Like, how cool is that? So there was something to it. It was ridiculous. Maybe not the best for fans, because you'd have to wait in line 3 to 4 hours to see something, and you do 2 things a day, and that's it. Like, that's not fun. But just walking around that place and the energy and the press conferences that were tied to it, one after another, like 3 in a day, you just learned about 80 new games. Like, that was awesome. That will never be topped. So I hope it comes back, because I think it's very important for the industry to have something like that, even if it isn't E3, something else.
Yeah. I know, like, because last year was my first time going to E3. I was flown there by PDP. Very grateful for them for sending me out there. And, for me, having an industry badge versus like my friends who were there who are content creators, just having like paid for their badge, like, it's a completely different experience. Like, especially when you get to go to all the media parts or the press areas, instead of just going to just the showroom floor. And I saw a lot of those lines, man, like the Final Fantasy one, the Marvel line, like, they were insane. Even the back when they had when they did the Dragon Ball Z Kakarot line, they were insane. And it literally, you from start to finish of the day, you could literally do 2 things with those lines. And it's interesting, because a lot of people I know that are content creators who've never been to E3 are so quick to say it's not worth it. And I keep telling them, like, well, I was saying before this whole pandemic hit and before it got canceled, I would tell them, like, watching E3 on YouTube versus physically being there, worlds apart from each other.
Yeah.
It's such a different experience.
Yeah, I feel like it's a pilgrimage every gamer needs to make. I hope that returns. Like, if you're really into video games, you will, again, you might not feel like you saw much, but when you walk out of there, you're going to be like, that place was awesome. Yeah. Like, the vibe that was there was awesome. Everything about it is awesome.
Yeah. I got to meet so many of my industry, people in the industry that are my friends now. Like my friend Kathy from Capcom, she oversaw that whole Monster Hunter Dragon whole thing. I was like, it was crazy, and all the people I've got to run into. And it's funny because some people told me, like, yeah, I was there, how come we didn't link up? And I'm like, it was insanely packed.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you just go to your hotel and just pass out because you just walked, like 80 miles. Yeah.
It's like the after parties. I'm like, I don't know if I get the energy to go to those.
I used to when I was young, not the after parties, but just like going to like a hotel bar and mingling, until they turned the lights on. They're like, get out of here. Quit talking about video games.
So with the new consoles that have been announced, like, what's your excitement level for the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5?
Through the roof. Like, I really am, like, all about video games. It's what I do the most. I write fiction, I read comics a lot, but video games are just, it's in my DNA. I just think these things are the best thing ever. I can't get enough of them. So when you tell me there's like a whole new level coming, like the standard's going to be raised through the roof. I don't know what all the specs mean. I'm not a technical guy. I get some of it, but when I see like this is significantly more powerful, the hair on the back of my neck raises up, and I'm just like, oh, let's do this. Like, I want to see what's next. I want to see like Horizon 2, what dinosaurs look like on a PS5.
Oh man.
Right? Or what, like Spider-Man, like a Spider-Man sequel. Like, what's that going to look like? It already looks amazing.
Yeah.
Can it look even better? There's a chance we could all be let down. Like, I just paid $500 and it looks exactly the same. Load times are a little better. That's a concern.
Yeah.
But, they've dazzled me for decades. So I'm hoping they do it again.
Yeah. And looking at because I
I look at the specs and I'm like, I kind of get them. I'm like, all right, it's the just I'm getting from it. Okay, it's significantly more powerful than what we're having now. And I saw the Unreal Engine 5 demo. I was like, whoa. I've seen some people say like, oh, it didn't look that graphically impressive. I'm like, are we looking at the same thing?
Yeah, that thing was smoking. It was flying. Like the speed to that was great. Like there was only one character on screen, you know, and I was like, well, what would it be like if there was like 10 or, you know, like a big robot? Like, how does that change things? This is just this, you know, this woman flying across this terrain at great speeds. And it was beautiful and fluid. And I wanted to play that. And they're like, well, it's not a game. And I was like, oh, all right, whatever. Turning this off. But yeah, that was kind of a weird announcement, right? Yeah. Sorry, my dog is
that's fine.
Going downstairs.
That's fine. No, it's it looked great, you know, just seeing what they can do technologically with the newer Unreal Engine. It does make me wonder, is this going to make Nintendo have to make either a new Switch or a modular upgrade to the Switch? Because one of the things, like, I know the Switch is a very hot selling item. It's very hard to get right now. A lot of people want, you know, the day and day releases for Switch to other consoles, but being realistic, I do feel like with this new generation and with companies focusing on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, it's going to be a little bit harder to try and port that same experience to something that's as underpowered as the Switch is.
Yeah, I think you're looking at, you know, the Wii again, right? Like, yeah, in terms of that graphical leap or technological leap, where it could be a little bit more challenging. And yeah, you might see the third-party support dry up a little, at least from like those big AAA games. But I still think the Switch is in a really nice position. You know, Nintendo first party. I think even those third parties that are making those big AAA games know there's a big audience there for Nintendo. Maybe you don't get the Assassin's Creeds ever on Switch, you know, the new gen ones, but maybe they'll make new Assassin's Creed games for Switch. You know, there's always that possibility. I think Switch is in such a unique position that it doesn't need to keep up with the PS5 and Xbox Series X. I think they'll be just fine. That said, 5 years from now or 4 years from now, I'd love a new Nintendo handheld again, hybrid system. Like, they got to keep making that because it's brilliant.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, a lot of people think, like, with the Wii, even though the Wii U didn't do financially very well, I feel like it was definitely the predecessor and idea, the proof of concept for what the Switch was going to be. Like, Nintendo, I just feel like since, I guess you could say the GameCube era, maybe the N64 era was either the GameCube or N64 era, I feel like were the last eras where Nintendo was like going for power and performance, where they've now shifted to, well, when last, I'd say like the Wii era was when they shifted to, okay, we're going to focus on games, casuals, and people so everyone can play, you know, simplicity.
Yeah, they've never done anything that's up to standard, right? Like even the GameCube had those tiny little discs. Yeah. And I remember like Tony Hawk was being ported there and like, well, we can't include all the songs on here. You know, there was something on there. It's like, there was storage concerns. It's like, Nintendo. But then you get like Wind Waker and you're like, this is like the best game out there. Like, screw that PlayStation 2 and Xbox. Like, this game is sweet. You know, so I just want Nintendo to keep being Nintendo. They're kind of the Willy Wonka of the video game industry, doing things that are different, yet they change the world, right? Like when they hit in a big way.
Yeah, they definitely do. And, you know, I could see them like the Switch. I think they found what they need to do. I know a lot of, you know, having a console that can be both a portable and a home console, especially with how the revised Switch has a significantly better battery life. So it's the best of both worlds, you know.
Well, I mean, the new one is, well, what do they call it? The Switch Lite.
Yeah.
Like, it's no longer a Switch, guys. Like, it's like, it doesn't switch positions. It's just one thing. You just made another handheld.
Yeah.
And they did that with 3DS, right? Like, they got rid of the 3D. It's like, what do you... maybe come up with a more clever name that isn't exactly what the device is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, call it the Google, you know, come up with your own word. So when you do cut off like the unique factor of it, it doesn't look so strange.
Yeah. I think also like some of the performance differences between like when you play it certain games docked to portably, which is kind of strange because some older titles that are ported, you would think they could run just as smooth as they do docked, and they don't. Like I've seen like Grandia HD Collection struggles portably. Bloodstain does not run that well portably, and it's like, really, come on now.
Yeah, like Fury Unleashed, I'm playing that right now for review. And I'm playing it on Xbox One, and then I have the Switch version. Switch version looks great on the TV, and then you do it handheld, run smooth, but the text is so tiny. Yeah, there's no way to blow it up for handheld mode. So there's things like that, you know, not every port's going to be perfect. It might be able to run it okay, but there will be things that are a little off. That's okay though, right? You have the option. Yeah. I prefer it be perfect both ways, but you know, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
Main thing that I would love Nintendo to do is please improve your online interface. It is a pain trying to play games online with the Switch, especially with the speed cap that they put on it. Like, even if I run an Ethernet into my Switch docked, it's still not like I've got 1 gig internet, and the most I can pull is like 22, maybe 30 megs. I'm like, no.
Yeah, that and the whole friend code concept. It's like, what are you doing, guys? What are you doing?
It's needlessly complicated.
Yeah, like we got past this in like 2005.
Yeah. So what are some like with when it comes to like games like Valorant, have you got the chance to play that, and what do you think of it so far?
I did not play Valorant. I watched some of it. I'm a big Overwatch fan, so this is definitely interesting to me. I love the class-based hero shooters, and this kind of blends that with Counter-Strike. I did watch about 2 hours of streams on launch day, and I was like, I'm sold on this. My whole clan, my first-person shooter group of people that play with me are on Xbox One. So they haven't announced an Xbox One yet. I'm sure it's coming. They're still in beta on PC. But once that hits, that'll be day one. Let's play this for a good couple of weeks, see what we think. But I love the concept of it. I love the flow that they have going. It's a little bit more calculated, more peeking around corners and shooting than Overwatch, where it's just you're just all out there going crazy.
Yeah.
So I think that would complement it nicely. I think it's an interesting idea, kind of borrowing from two giants in the genre, and it seems like they mesh well together.
Yeah. It's I was able to get one of the codes for it, which is so crazy because literally all I did was leave a stream up, fell asleep, woke up, it's like, oh, you have a code. And I'm like, awesome.
Let's do this. Yeah.
Right. I've gotten to play a couple matches with some of my friends that are in the industry, and it's a lot of fun. I like Overwatch. I like Counter-Strike, and it's a really good balance of the two. Like I was surprised, and it's really if it comes to more which I'm sure it's going to come to Xbox, PlayStation 4 and whatnot, I would love it. Yeah, it absolutely has to. Like I would love it to have cross play.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so as far as crossplay, do you think that's going to become the new norm?
Oh, it has to. It better. Like, I mean, it's already a part of my language where I'm like, let's play some Apex Legends. And then my friend's like, it doesn't do crossplay. I'm like, what? What do you mean it doesn't do crossplay? And it's like, oh, well, that sucks. That just feels wrong now, right?
Yeah.
Like you got Call of Duty doing it, Rocket League. There's a bunch of games doing it. Overwatch isn't yet. I fear playing people on PC on that game in particular. Whereas Call of Duty has more of the snap, which makes sense on controller. The pros play on PS4, which is interesting. Most competitive shooters are on PC, but that one's PS4 because I think it's a better console game than PC. But Yeah, we'll see. I hope it comes to console. I hope it makes sense for that. You never know. Counter-Strike doesn't have a big presence on console.
Yeah.
It's more of a PC shooter, but time will tell.
True. When it comes to like, you say you're currently reviewing a couple games for Game Informer. How do you? Because this is something I'm struggling with. I feel like every week I have anywhere from 8 to 10 games to review. Like every time I look in my email, oh, you got this code. Hey, Sega sent you this. Nintendo sent you that. And it's like, I've gotten to this point where I feel like I'm like, when it comes to playing games for fun, I feel like I have to schedule that. And like, it's so hard because it's like, I'm struggling with that.
It's once you become a professional or whatever it's your job, the lens changes, right? Like you see the world in a whole different way where it's, you are critiquing everything, either it's, for that game or how it compares to another game, or end of the year voting for games of the year. Even when you're just playing for fun, you're still thinking about it. But in terms of what I pick, if you have those 8 games, it's like, well, which ones are you the most excited about? Which ones do you want to talk to your viewers and readers and listeners about? And then which ones, you also have to think about which ones they're interested in. Like, is there a big release that everybody's talking about on social media? Should you tell them that they should spend their $30 to $60 on this or pass on it? So I think there's a lot of variables that come in there. But at the same time, you might be the trendsetter of being like, hey, there's this game called Children of Morta. Nobody's talking about it. Came out last year. I'm giving it a 9. I would have, put it on my top 10 list last year. I missed it. We didn't put it on our top 50 list. We missed it. It was under our radar, but you should play this. And then all of a sudden you have this, it snowballs. Everybody's talking about Children of Morta. That's something that happened with me, so those are chances you have to take with your time in figuring out what is, best for your group of people, and you in particular too.
Yeah. Like I got several games at once. I want to say between March and April, back to back to back, Doom. So I got Doom, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Resident Evil 3 Remake, Trials of Mana, and Predator. Within a week, I got codes for everything, and I'm just looking at it like, okay, that's 60. Oh, and Persona. Never mind. So I'm like, okay, that's over 150 hours. That's 60 hours. That I'm like just literally having anxiety because it's like it's overwhelming, and I've got people telling me, "Oh, just relax." I'm like, no, I have to write a written review because I up my website to I put written reviews because I feel like I can do more with that than I can do with a 10 or 15-minute video.
Right.
And it's stressful trying to do both, and then trying to maintain like a regular sleep schedule, which is almost impossible with this pandemic going on, and still trying to stream and have fun. It's just, I guess I'm just looking for advice from you because I'm like, I don't know how to do it.
I think I gave it to you, right? Like, I think you look at that and you just got to weigh your variables, and it's like, I would, out of those, I'd probably look at Persona as like already a known quantity. They're just kind of updating it. The other three, Res Evil, you could even say that falls in the same camp, but it's a significant remake.
Yeah.
Doom seems like the most easily digestible. You could spit that out pretty quick. A lot of hype around that one. Yeah. And then, maybe Res Evil to Final Fantasy. And also just what you're interested in. That's my take. It's what you're interested in, like what you think. There's a lot of hype around Final Fantasy VII. A lot of hype around Res Evil as well. I would rather play Res Evil than Final Fantasy, so that's why I would go with Res Evil. But put yourself into the reviews. Let people know what you're into, and those are the better reviews, I think, when you're knowledgeable and you have a passion for those types of games.
Yeah. I mean, I've even had people ask me like, oh, how come you don't cover this game or that game? And more often than not, I tell them, I'm like, I'm just not interested in that. Like, and I don't feel, and I've explained this to a lot of people, like, I don't feel it's fair for me to cover a game that I have absolutely no interest in, because that's not going to be fair to you for me to critique it and give it a rating when I don't have a passion for it. Not saying that all the times, like, I shouldn't cover games I don't have an interest in. Like, I covered Sakura Wars from Sega. Never played a Sakura Wars title before. Didn't know much about the franchise, but I tried it. Surprisingly, I came to love it. I thought it was pretty interesting. I was like, hey, you know, this is probably not going to score very high if you don't like reading a lot. If you're not into very, you know, Japanese style, visual novel style games, you're probably not going to enjoy it. But hey, I had a blast with it.
Yeah,
you know, it's really not easy. And there's so much coming out.
Yeah, the thing is, I think you framed that perfectly, and you got to let your readership know kind of your comfort level and things, your expertise and things. You know, any review you click into, you assume that this person knows what they're talking about, and you know, enough to give it a score or you know, tell you if it's good or not and why it matters to that franchise, right? But you don't need all that, right? Like, you don't know how this is important to Sakura, but you're bringing the perspective of someone who's trying it for the first time. There's a lot of your listeners or readers that are going to be in the same camp. So as long as you have that early on of like, hey, I'm new to this, they know your perspective, right? They know how you're kind of gauging this thing on your own. You know, Game Informer, we have a lot of people that are a lot of writers, and IGN and GameSpot do, where you can find people that are better suited for certain games than others, right? Like, you have a deep well of personalities and interests to pick from. But if you're just on your own, I think that perspective is also very valuable, right? Even if you're new to something, that can be just as compelling to read than if you're an expert in something, right?
Yeah, I agree.
There's no bad choice.
No, this is very.
Just keep working. Keep
reviewing. It's very true, because it's you know, doing this full time now, juggling all these projects from, you know, video and written reviews to podcast, streaming, and more. Like, it's really giving me more of a passion for the industry. You know, more of a respect for things that. Not saying I didn't respect it before, but it's helped me see why certain things are done the way they are. Why, you know, like when people are like, oh, that's a lazy job on this video game, that's a lazy review. And I'm like, well, how can you really quantify that? You know, how do you know, like, if and it's kind of interesting when you see people that they'll say that, they'll throw that out there just because they don't like the opinion that's being given. And I'm like, no, like, if this is how they felt, that's their review. And one of the things I keep running into over and over and over, because people are like, oh, you're too positive in your reviews. I'm like, well, I grew up in an era where GamePro and other magazines back in the 90s and parts of the 80s were like, the fun factor, the experience was at the forefront. And then we go into why we don't like it, you know, why there's some issues. And that's where I'm at with that. And, you know, I'm constantly getting from a lot of people, and probably trolls, who are like, oh, how, you know, this company paid you to say this. And I'm like, well, no, they can't do that. They can't pay me. I mean, I guess getting a code or a game physically sent, I guess that's compensation. But I mean, that I'm not financially being paid to say, hey, this is good. There are boundaries sometimes, like, you can't talk too much, you don't want to spoil the game, but
right. Yeah, you don't want to ruin the experience for people. But when people say a review is lazy, that is like one of the most damaging things you could say to a writer, because like the game creators, they want to keep working on their game forever and make it better and better and better.
Yeah.
The same thing goes for writers, right? But you have hardly any time, especially with deadlines or embargoes, right, where you want to keep working on your piece, making it better, explaining more, you know, being more clear, you know, being more of an artist in how you say things, and presenting it in a unique way, and you just don't have a lot of time. Sometimes, you know, you just got to be like, well, that's it. And it goes out. So when someone says it's lazy, it's like, it's not lazy. It's just, I had this amount of time. Yeah. I wish it was better. I wish I had more time to work on this. I put as much as I could into it. It's just, that's the nature of the beast. And that's the same for game devs too. You know, sometimes it's like, we have a release date to hit. Oh, the game shipped pretty buggy. You know, the critics rightfully take it to task. And it's like, we did our best.
Yeah.
And, you know, it goes the same for the critics too. We did our best, you know, like with what we had, we did our best.
And, you know, the other thing, a lot of people assume that, you know, we should just stay focused on one title even after it comes out. And it's like, when you're doing this professionally and the amount of stuff you're covering, it's like, as soon as it comes out, well, you'll get the code or you'll get the product, you'll work on it, you do your review, give your impressions and stuff like that. And then once you've got your review out, you've got like however many more coming in. So I've had people like, hey, you know, do you remember this part here, here, and here? And I'm like, been a while. You know, it's like
yeah. By the time a review hits, sometimes you're already like knee deep into your next adventure, you know, like or, you know, like when someone says stick with a game, it's like, I wish I could. Like when Star Wars Battlefront 2 hit, I took that game to task on just like, you know, being awful with microtransactions. Flash forward a couple of years later and it's like, it's a better game.
Yeah.
But my review is a moment in time, right? Like it was like, this is what happened when it hit. This is what it was. That's history. But there's still people that are going back and looking at the review now, and I'll get emails every once in a while like, you don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, dude, I mean, seriously, like that's from, you know, I'll write that and they're like, oh, well, you should update it. It's like, well, that would mean playing through the whole thing again. That'd be a full-time job as like Star Wars Battlefront 2 editor, which might not be a bad gig, but, you know, every business, every outlet would go out of business because you just wouldn't have enough people to do stuff. Or Fortnite, like Fortnite constantly changing, you know, they keep changing it up. Good and bad sometimes, you know, like a gun will break the game for a week and then they nerf it. And yeah, it's just fascinating where games have gone.
Yeah. I find it so amazing when people get so upset, like especially fighting games, like, oh, Street Fighter had the Champion Edition, Mortal Kombat has Aftermath, and people are like, I'm just gonna wait for the final game to come out because I'm tired of buying the same game over and over. And I'm like, if you grew up in the 90s, you were buying Street Fighter.
Over Super Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo Championship Edition. I had all of them.
It's just it's almost impossible to stick with these games like beyond, you know, unless you really have a passion for it and you have the time in your spare time to keep track of it. The amount that we're covering, like, it's almost impossible. Like I'm covering Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition right now, and you know, by the time a week before that launches, it's probably going to go up. And once I'm done with that, I'm on to the next thing. And I tell a lot of my audience, they're like, hey, can you give me some insight? Nope. I'm like, I signed an NDA. I will not. You know, I'm not going to get caught up in anything like that. And I think, you know, it's the more I work in this industry, I'm just really coming to appreciate like how, not only how well run a lot of things are, but also how close knit everyone is.
Yeah, so there's a lot of great people in this business, you know, from journalists to PR to, you know, just people wanted to make it easy for people, right? Like, and just, you know, appreciate each other however we can and the work that goes into stuff. I love that about this industry.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say, it makes me like jealous beyond belief of movie critics.
Yeah.
We'll just go into a movie theater and it's like, yeah, this is 2 hours. You know, it's like clockwork for them. It's like us, we get a new game and you're like, I don't know how long this shark RPG is going to be. Maneater. I don't know. Maybe I'll see you in a couple days. Maybe I'll see you in a couple weeks. I have no idea how long I'm going to be playing as a shark. But that's the nature of video games, and kind of what makes them brilliant, right? Like you just never know. As a critic, there's no walkthrough online or time to beat online yet. You're at ground zero of like, all right, I'll be the one that figures this out. I guess I'll put the time in my review, how long it took me to beat it, and then that becomes like a thing for people to latch onto. Like, okay, that game's 50 hours, and it's like, yeah, I had to figure that out on my own. Like, and you could ask like PR and all that stuff, like how long is it? But you never know what kind of answer you're going to get. If they're going to be like, well, if you see all the content in the game and play through on the 3 difficulties, it's just it's a crapshoot when you go into these games, and that's part of what's fun about them.
Yeah. Well, winding down to the last couple of questions, being respectful of your time. One of the questions I wanted to ask was like, what is your, I know this is kind of like a hot topic, but like with the whole leaks for Last of Us 2, I don't understand why people, and I'm seeing this a lot more often with games coming out. We saw it with Final Fantasy VII Remake, we saw it with Kingdom Hearts, we've seen it with Resident Evil, where people, I feel like, back in the day, the anticipation for the game coming out was huge. Now it's like, oh, let me hack it, put it all out there, and just ruin it. Because the amount of work that goes into creating these games, the time people are spending sacrificing away from their families and loved ones, it's just, I just feel like it's ethically immoral when these people hack stuff. Like, from your opinion, being in the industry, like, how do you view it? Like,
well, I think that kind of speaks to the anticipation of it, that people would go to the lengths to you put it online, right? Like they want people to, oh my God, running dog.
Oh no, it's fine.
Sorry, she's going nuts. They just want to be like, oh, I'm the first to have it, or I want to ruin this for people. I mean, you're always going to have the jerks out there that are going to spoil the fun for others, right? And then it's just up to us to kind of block all that stuff out, protect ourselves like we do from COVID-19, right? Like treat it like the same thing. But I think there's still a lot of hype for the big games that are coming out. Be it Last of Us, Ghost, any of those big games. People want to know how they are. You saw the huge sales on like Final Fantasy and Animal Crossing and some of the games coming out now. It's been a lighter schedule than normal just because we have a new generation of games coming, and then also delays from the pandemic. But there's still a lot of interest in the AAAs, and that's great to see because they're my favorites. I love indie games and all that stuff, but man, when you get a game that's made by thousands of people like Red Dead or any of those, like Final Fantasy VII Remake, just the visuals and the vision and just trying to take the gaming to the next level, you can't beat that.
Yeah, definitely. And winding down to the last 2 questions I have for you, like, what are would you say, like, I guess independent I guess you can say independent games journalists such as myself and others who have either their own website or are doing coverage on, various outlets. What if, well, actually, this is 2 questions in one. First part of that question is, what value do you think independent games journalists bring to the table? And I guess the second question is, how would an independent journalist transition over to being part of like an established brand?
I think it's equal value to any critic, right? Like, I think you're just another voice that people can latch on to and trust in and find entertainment in. If you're streaming, I think that's every bit as important as anybody that's established. And if you're good at it, I would say they're both the same. I wouldn't even say established. I would just say you're going to find an audience at both. If you're good at what you do, you will grow that audience. Like, people, word of mouth will spread. Reviews will get picked up on different websites, forums. Like, this guy did a good job. Hopefully that's what people are doing. This is a voice you should pay attention to. And you see that in all these different YouTube videos, people making great video reviews or breakdowns of games. they've just snowballed into huge careers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're all valuable, and I love that there's so many people out there doing it and trying to do it and learning as they go. That's the thing. If there's any advice anyone should have, it's just keep going. Don't feel like you're not good enough, because like I started when I was 17 years old and I was terrible, terrible writer. I had the knowledge of games. I just couldn't put it down on paper. And yet it's being sent out to readers, right? Like, like my writing's awful. Like I'm writing like Beavis and Butthead. But then, I learned as I went, and it was trial and error, and it still is. I was, trained in a very unconventional way, like basically, trial by fire for me. It was like, keep going or lose your job, but just keep getting better. And I did each year, better. And I'm still learning today, 25, 26 years later. I'll be like, oh, that was an interesting sentence structure. I like that. Or, well, that's an interesting approach. I like that. And the whole video thing now too, starting to cut my teeth on doing videos, and we're doing video reviews now at Game Informer for the first time, which is weird. We weren't doing them before, but there's no wrong approach. You just got to keep going and getting better. And you're always going to be learning and always getting better, but never get discouraged in it. Like, keep going, talk to other people about how you're doing, get their feedback on how things are, and, just learn that way. Yeah.
And I guess the last question I have for you is like, because I know you do podcasting as well. How's that been going? Has the pandemic affected your ability to do podcasting, or has it ramped up more ability to do it, or how's it going for you with that?
Without like direct eye contact, when you have like 4 people, you'll every once in a while have people talking over each other. As if there's a question kind of volleyed to the group, it'll just be like a weird free for all. Yeah. And then when everybody's talking over each other, the next question is asked. Everybody's just kind of sitting there like, you doing this first, or me, or you, or who's going to do this? So there's that kind of thing. That's a problem. And now you kind of start seeing like the hand raise, like, like it's not the best viewing, but at least it keeps things a little clearer. People have different setups. So there's different audio and technical issues that come with that, and different internet speeds, and people falling off every once in a while. You never have, in a studio, you never have someone just fall over backwards on a chair and suddenly be gone for a couple of minutes. But that's what happens with online, right? Like all of a sudden Comcast, poops the bed, and there's an interesting term for you. There's problems that happen. So I would say it's going pretty smooth though. Our expertise hasn't changed at all. People are still as passionate as before. People are going a little stir crazy at home. You get that a little bit. People's haircuts are getting a little crazy.
Hey, we're bald. We don't have that problem.
Yeah, man. Like we're the victors of the pandemic here.
Right?
This is how you do it. But yeah, there's just various things about life that could affect, the flow and people's, sanity, and, you don't want them burning out, or, giving people time off now. It's like, well, you're still going to be in the same spot, but you need to relax the brain, and, being understanding of all that stuff. And it's a weird world. It really is a strange place to be in, but Game Informer continues to operate as it has in the past. We're still making the magazine that's going out to mailboxes. We're still making all the podcasts and video shows and content for the website. Like it hasn't stopped. It just looks a little different in terms of video. But we're plugging along, hoping for this to end, but are in for the long run. We know this isn't gonna be overnight, or maybe not until next spring, but or summer. Gosh.
Yeah.
And even then, it's like, maybe we get a shot. Maybe it helps us. Maybe it doesn't. Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a great note to end on, but I mean, that's the reality of the world, right? Like, but we're both safe. We're content. We're doing what we love. That's what matters, right?
Yeah. True. And I have one final question for you. Did you have fun?
I did. I did. I love your show. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. Stick with it. And yeah, hopefully you get through that backlog of yours here soon, which means you're not going to touch it.
Yeah, yeah. Is that every time I look at it, like, oh yeah, I want to play Neo 2. No, that's not happening. No. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we go?
No, just tell him he's doing a great job. Like it really is good. I like your setup. Really nice, clean microphone. Yeah, you're doing it right, man. Keep it up.
Thank you. Man, I like your microphone. That's the Shure mic, right? Like
it is. Yep.
That one. Okay, so when the only reason I don't have that one is because I could not find it anywhere. Like Guitar Center didn't have it. When I would try to order it on Amazon, it's always sold out. So I was like, you know what? I need a mic because I was using a USB for the longest. There's always a hissing sound that USB mics have, and you can't really. You can make it lower, but it's always audible to an extent. And it's just like with this, you can't hear. I've got the air conditioner on. My cat's over there scratching at the door. It's like, let me in. No, but like especially since I've gotten to using XLR interfaces, like I just can't go back.
Yeah,
and especially like headphone microphones, like gaming headsets. No.
Never again. Yeah. I hear you.
So yeah, with that being said, I mean, for you guys, if you're looking for this episode of the podcast, is available on Apple Podcasts. Yes, I'm lazily reading it off because it's right below us. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and will be available in video format on YouTube as well as on Twitch. And if you want to support the podcast, we've got Patreon. Everything you invest into me, I reinvest into the channel to deliver you guys better quality content. And for all of Andrew's social media links, they will be down in the description below the podcast, as well as Game Informer as well. I highly recommend you follow Andrew and Game Informer on all social media platforms. And, that's as gamers, let's just try and do our best. That's social distance. Let's try and all work together because we have to beat this. We all have to come together and work together and take it seriously for what it is. It's not a minor thing. We've never in our lifetimes experienced anything like this. And I hope that when this passes, we never have to again. But with that with that being said, this is Andrew and myself. We're signing out. You guys have a good one.
Hey, did you enjoy this episode of the Kasanova Podcast? Well, I'm sure you did. And since you did, and you're wondering where else you can find it on every podcasting outlet. Yes, that includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Launchpad DM by Podcast One, and so much more. And the only thing I ask of you is if you truly enjoyed it, even if you didn't enjoy it, please leave a rating and tell us what you thought of it, what you like, what you didn't like, and everything in between. And also, if you're looking for video formats of this podcast and many more, you'll be able to find them on youtube.com/MikelCasanova, as well as on twitch.tv/MikelCasanova, and new episodes every single Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, with that being said, this is Mekel Kasanova, Hawaii's favorite YouTuber. I am signing out. You guys have a great one.